Okay, what's the song that Eazy-E did with Young MC? Here's a hint. It's also the song that MC Hammer did with Above the Law. That's right, at that point it's probably pretty obvious, and it's also probably the title of my video, so there's no real mystery to dangle before you guys. I'm talking about the West Coast Rap All-Stars were all in the same gang. This came out in 1990 on Reprise, which was a subsidiary of Warner Brothers Records, and is definitely, clearly, to some degree at least, the West Coast answer to the Stop the Violence movement's self-destruction. That came out in 1989. This came out in 1990. And that in itself is a really sort of a follow-up to the big, sort of We Are the World phenomena, where just a whole bunch of artists, musicians came together for a good cause. And there's been other ones like Sun City, which featured some rappers, the King Dream, Holiday Chorus, which featured like everybody from Whitney Houston to the Fat Boys. So it's been a big tradition, but really for the pure, just strictly hip-hop, Stop the Violence was really the first big one. Then again, you had the West Coast answer here, we're all in the same gang. There was also, of course, Hip-Hop Against Apartheid, which I already did a video about. There's a few other kind of, maybe more little spin-off ones, like Close the Crack House, The Points, Free Bamia. So there's been several of those. This is definitely one of the biggest ones. The video used to play like all the time on Yo MTV Raps and everything. This was really well-respected and successful. I mean, they're all pretty well-respected because a lot of dope artists come together for a good cause. What are you going to say? But this was definitely really one of the top ones and probably the real successor to Stop the Violence, Self-Destruction. And again, like I said, this is all West Coast artists. So you've got, well, the artists I've already named, NWA, Eazy-E, MC Hammer, you got guys like JJ Fad, O-Count 357, Body and Soul, Def Jeff, Digital Underground, just a whole ton of great West Coast artists. King T, of course, he opens it up. So it's just a real monster posse cut. It's about 8 minutes long. It's produced by Dr. Dre himself, and it's interesting, okay, about the production. It is a really kind of cool, understated track. It has some nice beat change-ups every once in a while for certain MCs. Like when Above the Law comes on, when Humpty comes on to Joe Underground's verse, it changes up, and that's really cool. But at first, I remember really thinking, especially when I was younger, when it first came out, that it's a good, solid track. But when you compare it to say like NWA, Dope Man or something, I was like, well, Dr. Dre really saved his own top shelf production for his own projects. Like this is, this is a good track, but it's nothing like those wild, anything off Straight Outta Compton, which is just insane production. But then again, really, now that I look back on it as I'm older, like what could you do? Because again, it's a real super long track, just chock full of big MCs, and because it has a real important message, they really want you listening to the lyrics. So it's got to be something that just doesn't, again, Dope Man, that beat's like all over the place, and it's huge, and it's bombastic. This really needed something that's a little more subtle, but that doesn't sound generic, and so actually, I think it's a really solid track. It's a really good, testament to Dr. Dre's production. But again, it's definitely a song you're not really listening to for the production. It's a dope track, and again, those change-ups especially really bring it to life. But you're really listening to it for the MCs and the message behind it. Now, this, you might notice I've just got the cassette. You might think, why doesn't he have, the big 12-inch, which is sort of standard for most of my videos? Well, because I wanted this, because this is actually a full album. There is a 12-inch single of this, and it's got the main version, which is the same as on the album as on the 12-inch. And it's also got a shorter cut, which is the one they did the video for. And that's interesting because, of course, what are you going to do? They're not really going to make a music video for like 8-minute song. You got to cut it down. And so how they did that, because there's not really a whole lot of instrumental. There's a little bit at the beginning and end, but basically it's a packed song just full of verses, verses, verses. And there's sort of like a little bit of a chorus hook. Michelle A kind of comes in and sings and says a word, but it's like 12 seconds long. It's like a nanosecond before they just boom, stop, go right to the next verse. So what they did was two things. First, they just cut O-Town 357 and JJ Fad. Sorry, they're out. If you had to cut anybody, I mean, those are probably two of the artists you're best cutting out. But it does sort of suck because, I mean, there's really only 3 female artists in this big long lineup to begin with. So they really, basically, it's all the guys. But then what they also did, which is actually worse, is they also cut, maybe not all of them, but a lot of the verses from the MCs and just cut segments out. So sometimes they don't even really necessarily make sense when you hear it in the video, you know, like, because they just sort of say something and then like they start to make a point and then boom, on to the next MC. So to really hear the full version, you've got to hear the full line song. So that shorter version is on the 12-inch single, but why you would ever choose to spin that on your own, I have no idea. But it does also have the full-length version, so I'm not dissing the 12-inch single. But besides that useless edit, there is one genuine exclusive to the 12-inch called Mike's Rap, which is about 5.5 minutes or something. It's Michael Inception just talking, basically just sort of his message about anti-gang violence and everything else. And it's over a beat by Dr. Dre, and I think Shock G also worked on it, which is pretty good. I mean, it's a little standard P-funky bit, but it's pretty solid. But it is really just Michael Conception talking, so it's not really a must-have record that you're going to spin again and again and revisit. But so that is a little extra exclusive bonus to the 12-inch. But this has two interesting things: a West Coast mix, which is pretty good. It's definitely more towards the smooth, gangsterish kind of stuff. It's also produced by Dr. Dre, so it's a solid track. I do prefer the original, but it's one of those things, I guess, once you listen to the original enough and you sort of play it out, then, you know, it's time for a remix, and this is a pretty solid remix. But then, again, it's a full album, so it's actually got a whole ton of other songs by a whole ton of other artists. But basically all nobodies. In fact, let's really delve into that. Now, this album is produced, and by produced I mean not produced musically like by Dr. Dre, but produced financially and conceptually and organized by a guy named Michael Conception. He's an ex-Crip member, which ties into the message of the song, obviously. And he started a subsidiary of Reprise, so subsidiary of a subsidiary, called Grand Jury Entertainment. And he had a whole bunch of young artists under his label, you know, all newcomers and stuff. And this album really is basically a showcase for all those guys. In a way, certainly, I don't want to say Michael Conception is insincere about his message. I totally don't believe that. He seems to have spent an awful lot of his life trying to do really positive things up with, you know, especially gang members in LA, but to stop violence and stuff in general. So, absolutely not trying to say anything along those lines. But definitely, this is an album that's put together, you know, sold off the basis of the West Coast All-Stars, all the big names, and then really all these other artists sort of piggybacking on them. And like all these guys are going to get you know, publicity. They're all going to get heard because people are going to buy the album for that one song. In fact, there's actually 2 other singles off of this album. Most people don't even really necessarily know about it. I think some people kind of pick up the MC Supreme one just because it's got a cool picture cover. But basically, that's it. There's one by MC Supreme, and there's one by a female MC named Sola, who, again, nothing else in their whole careers. They don't have albums out, they don't have any other singles. All they've done are these 2 singles, but they have singles on Warner Brothers Records because of this, you know, project. And both of those songs, the production, I think, outshines the MCs. Not to say that everybody on here is whack. In fact, 1 or 2 artists, I said they're all basically nobodies, but the South Central Posse did actually have a couple singles out. And also, the Juvenile Committee had a full album out and a couple other singles off of this album. These guys, like all the guys on the album, were managed and led by Michael Conception. If you read the back cover, you know, I mean, he's got the big shanks, you know, a message from Michael Conception. This is his project. And Michael Conception, by the way, for you younger listeners, is also the, I believe, uncle, certainly relation, I'm pretty sure uncle of Kendrick Lamar. So where Self-Destruction is really sort of speaking to, you know, obviously hip-hop fans and that audience and trying to get them to stop violence in general. This is a little bit more specific. It's really about anti-gang violence, which makes sense because, again, Michael Conception came from gangs. He's one of the original Crips, and certainly in Los Angeles had the huge blood Crips problems where gang violence was more extreme. And so that's really what they're focusing on here. I mean, certainly it's in general an anti-violence song, but it's really specifically, you listen to all the verses, they all are talking about gangs and speaking specifically sort of the gang members to stop the violence, and that we're all in the same gang as the message of the song, obviously as a title, saying, you know, hey, you know, we shouldn't be fighting each other, we're all one, we're all one people, etc., etc. So this is a little more focused than just stop the violence, but obviously you can take the messages from the song even if you're not in a gang and apply them to your life and try to be less violent. So here we see the photos of all the individual grand jury All-Stars, as they call themselves. There they are as a collection. There's the West Coast All-Stars on the bottom. And these are all the acts individually. This is Microconception here. And while, again, I'd say they're all essentially unknown acts, with the exception of the South Central Posse, who had at least been a little bit known before. Some of the production, on the other hand, are established artists. Not a lot, but there's DJ Broadway, who did stuff for like King T and Madcap. He did a little bit on here. Bilal Bashir, you know, of Ice-T's Rhyme Syndicate Camp is on here. There's also DJ Scratch. I don't know if that's the same DJ Scratch or not, because this is West Coast, so maybe not. But a DJ Scratch is on here, and the songs that he produced does feature some good scratching. So I don't know if he's that DJ Scratch or not, but whoever he is, he does some good work. And in general, the production here is pretty solid. The whole album features some pretty good stuff. I'm seeing a little more iffy, you know, like this little kids group on here and stuff, and there's some questionable stuff. It's probably not an album you would bother with for any other reason besides the West Coast Rap All-Stars, put it that way. But, you know, come for the West Coast Rap All-Stars and stay for the rest of the album, because it's not bad. One cool thing, too, on the reverse, they do print out all the lyrics to the song. Only the one song, which gives you a sense, like, all of that is the lyrics to just one song, because, again, it is a big Monster Posse cut. And it's interesting, some of the verses on here. I was thinking to myself before I started this video, who had the best verse, and I actually haven't thought about it. I'm pretty sure it's Ice-T. He really sells it. He really says some smart things on there, and really delivers it strongly. Def Jeff, he starts out really strong, and you think, oh, he's really smart, and then he's got some really kind of complicated rhymes, like, oh, he's really like the lyrical verse on here. But then if you really pay attention to the lyrics, it really starts to sound like he's just sort of rhyming some words that sound good together. He's not really saying anything. A lot of the verses, because they are on so message, they do come off as a little preachy and a little bit simple. Above the Law actually probably kind of comes off the weakest, starting out like, being the pimps that we are, and, you know, I don't know, it's kind of corny. NWA, interestingly, does not feature Ice Cube, 1990, so this is right when he was split. So you've got NWA and Eazy-E separately. So NWA then is just Dr. Dre and Ren doing a quick verse together, and that's one of the weaker verses on the album, because they don't really say too much. And then Eazy-E rounds it up, and in a way, in a lot of ways, that is the best verse of the song. Except he's so undercuts the message. He's so, like, you know, he's not really talking about stopping the violence so much as saying, if you can't handle the violence in the streets, then get the hell out. I mean, that's literally a line from the song. And he's really almost kind of glorifying violence through the whole thing, ending it by saying, you know, take notes from Eazy-E, the violent hero. So you've just got to admire that, you know, impertinence of Eazy-E, you know. I mean, it's just sort of like him still being that's Eazy-E, that's still just him being him. There might be a big message record of non-violence, but he's going to do his own thing. Sort of like when ODB kind of goes crazy on a Wu-Tang record or something like that. It's just our Eazy-E, just an audacious guy. And who else is on here? Like Body and Soul, that's interesting, because they've only really got 112-ish to their whole career. They're briefly on Delicious Vinyl, one single, and I did a blog about that. And they're gone, though, of course, one of the crew, D, went on to become the host of Pump It Up, and of course, who famously got assaulted by Dr. Dre of NWA, and was production of this record. She's on here. And I don't know, what else is there really talking about this record? Grand Jury Entertainment, again, that label, Microconception's label, they did do other records, sort of through the early 90s. Other, you know, lesser known, definitely a lot of anti-gang violence themes and all their other work, too, by those other artists. Because, again, I certainly don't want to imply that Microconception was not at all purely motivated. I believe he was. And, again, you see it through all of his projects in his career. So, yeah, that's it. Not much else to say about this record. It's pretty well known already for good reason. Big name artist, good cause, major label. But I'll still play a clip of it. I'll also play a clip of the lesser-known Gangsta Mix, which is only on the B-side of the album, so that's interesting. And that's about it. Maybe someday down the line, not the next video or anything, but a little further down the line, I'll also take a look at Self-Destruction and some of those other similar kind of big good cause posse cuts. But for now, let's hear We're All in the Same Gang by the West Coast Rap All-Stars.
I'm King News, and I come to you with the truth. The mean streets took 6 more lives overnight, all the result of gang-bang stupidity. By the way, you gangsters should know, one of your victims was a 3-year-old girl. Local gang members, you still don't get it, do you?
It's straight up madness everywhere I look. Used to be a straight A student, now it's a crook, robbing people just to smoke and shoot up. Used to have a crew cut, now he's a poop butt. Dropped out of school and joins the neighborhood gang, hanging on the street selling cane to his own people. Now when I say people, I mean color. You time to stress the fact that you're dumb. Get yourself presentable, son, and just come together. You better, cause pretty soon it's gonna be too late. A message from King T the Great.
Sisters, since we are the mothers of this earth, it's time we start being good mothers from the birth of our children. No time for sleeping, teach them to fight and win for the right reason. It's your time, it's your life, live it. Proud to be black, young and gifted, lifted by the knowledge of taking the right route. Gang violence needs to be wiped out. ALMIGHT, ALMIGHT, we see the FUTURE should be a positive thing. Body and soul, and you we're in the same game.
One and the same, everyone came in the same chains. Caught with the same aim, brain games, and names changed. To protect the innocent bystander, lie, slander, and the master planner. Destroy the blackmail, crack jail, and semi-automatic for static if the crack fails. So since we all talk the same slang, stop killing my brother, cause we're all from the same gang.
Don't you know we've got to put our heads together? Make the change, cause we're all in the same game.
Yo, tell them what's up, Lo. Like this, huh? Now, as a youth, I used to get my bang on, and on the Ave, get my part-time slang on. This point in time for me was no joke, though. They knew I was crazy, so they labeled me loco. Khakis, crease, gone, hat, feeling sporty. Low riding, and tossing up a 40. Thinking in my mind that no one can handle us. The Diamond Brothers never touched more secular. But I chilled and found life more suitable. Cause I'm the brother that makes black so beautiful. I ain't slipping on down with a head trip. I'm talking to all the Bloods and all the Crips. Throw down your bags, get on the right track, man. It's time to fight, unite, and be a black man. Tone Loc is on a positive change. Cause remember, we're all from the same gang.
Being the pimps that we are, we're here to speak on a situation that has gone too far.
Here at home in the ghettos of LA.
What's up?
We're a young black brothers, not promised to